So a good first step, if you're making just about anything, but especially if you're going to work in a 3D program or make something complicated, is just to do a little super rough doodle. I mean, I can't imagine it being any rougher than this. To just kind of try out your ideas and just kind of roughly figure out what it is you're going to make. And here I just have like a little iPhone grab from my sketchbook. And I'm just kind of thinking about, okay, what shapes I want to have in there, how they're going to balance together, and just trying to figure things out loose and in the fastest way possible before I open any software. And I find this is just a super helpful way to make things, have it be a little less stressful, and get where you need to go more quickly. All right, so we have our set. Maybe let's just save our work here. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to our project, scenes, make a new folder. I'm going to call this balance. Balance 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros .mb. All right. So this set's a little small. Give ourselves a little room to work. Let's see here. So if I'm looking at my drawing, I have a torus, a cone, a sphere, a couple elongated cubes, and I was thinking this could be a cylinder, and this will be a Platonic solid. And I was thinking, I wanted to kind of show you a bunch of primitives to kind of introduce those to you. Okay, so let's get to it. So we have here our perspective camera. Let's just kind of look at this. Spin around it and move around our scene. It also can be helpful to do this view. So here's our perspective camera again, but then we have a camera right above our scene, right to the front and right to the side. And these other cameras are called orthographic cameras. They have no perspective. Parallel lines in the scene won't converge, but we'll talk a lot more about that later. For now, it's just handy to have these 3 points of view to help us kind of lay out and position objects. And we can see here that our cube is black because for each camera view, you can have preferences for each camera and each camera view. So we changed the preferences in perspective to render both the front and back faces, but we kind of need to do that for everything. It's also handy, so there's lots of different render modes. So right now we're in smooth shaded with texture maps. If I hit 4, we go to wireframe mode. So what's nice about that, as we start positioning objects, is we can see the outline of stuff. We can kind of see through things. So that's what I'm going to do for now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to make is a cylinder. As I've mentioned, there's many different places to do the same thing. I can do it through contextual menu. I can do it through create polygon primitive cylinder. I can go to these different shelves that have different tools that are handy. So let's just do that. All right. So let's see here. Maybe I'll look at it from the front. So if you want any view to take over, you just select it and hit spacebar, and it takes over. You can also, by hitting Alt-B, change the color of the background. Depending on what you're working on, that can be handy. So I have my poly cylinder. I'm going to hit D to move the pivot so I can snap it right to the floor. And then X to turn on grid snapping. Maybe I'll go back my 4 view over to the side a little. Something like that. All right, next I will make a cube. Again, I'm going to hit D to move the pivot somewhere where it makes it a little handier to work with. Snap it right to the floor. Another thing I'm going to do is, okay, I have this object. I can hit W to move it, E to rotate it, R to scale it. All right. And as you see, as I hit these buttons, different tools get highlighted. See, over here. Now, if I want to alter the way these tools behave, I can double click on them. So for rotation, for this round, I'm going to turn on snap rotation. So it's only going to rotate objects in 15-degree increments. And what's kind of nice about this is it creates a little bit of an underlying symmetry, an underlying set of angles that kind of permeate your scene and give it a sense of cohesion. So it also just like makes it a little less overwhelming how many decisions you can make here. All right, so I'm going to rotate this 30 degrees. All right, I'm going to make this thing a little skinnier. That. Put up. Then we'll add some other stuff. Sphere. Keep adding some objects based on the drawing. Let's do Platonic Solid. All different ones. Going. We'll add subdivisions to this. Just duplicating that. We'll just turn it back into a square. If I want to move something and keep it constrained to a certain axis, I have this moves it just in the X, that moves it just in the Y. If I grab it from the middle, it's freeform. And if I want to just move it on one plane, I can grab this little square hanging out here. At this point, it might be nice to create a new camera. We're going to call this shot cam. All right, so hit 6 so I can see shading. I'm going to turn on the gate mask so I can see how it's framed up, how my scene is framed up in the camera. For this little exercise here, you're going to be working at 1080 by 1080. We see that the square is being, you can't see where the square is, so I'm going to change this view to vertical. Fits in there nicely. Zero out my camera. Zero out the X. Zoom out. We'll go to our 4 view, and instead of having it be perspective, we'll have it be our shot cam. That way, we can position the camera in our other views and see what that does to our shot. I'm going to turn this to wireframe unshaded so I can see my shapes a little better. Another thing, I'm going for something kind of graphic, more observational than immersive. I'll talk about what that means later, but I'm going to change the focal length to be more telephoto. And what that's going to do is it's going to make the scene more graphic. It's going to flatten it out, less distortion in the camera. If there's anything in any one of these points of view and you want to frame up on it, you can just hit F, and that'll put it right. Just zoom right in there. Could be a little handy. All right, so let's add one more object, a torus. So if we see at the creation here, there's all these different parameters. One thing that I like to kind of play with from time to time is this axis. So what the axis is a vector. It's a direction that is being used to control the orientation, which way it's facing when it's created. So right now we see there's no vector in the X, there's a vector in the Y, and there's no vector in the Z. So right now the flat part of the torus is facing the Y. So what I'm going to do is change this to the Z. I want it to come right at us. Now we could have just as easily rotated it, but I like to, whenever possible, not introduce any transformations I don't need. It just helps keep me organized. And sometimes, even though we did something, it won't update, so you'll have to change just some parameters of your object. Another thing that's kind of handy is you can control click on these numbers, and that lets you kind of scrub the values. Right. And so we'll just add some more divisions to smooth it out a bit. Let's do something like this. I can either scale it, or if I want to just keep it kind of minimal, adjust the radius, inner radius, and what I'm trying to do is just have it feel like it's being balanced on this kind of block here. And this looks like it's going to fall over. We'll deal with that in a second. I'm just going to zoom out a touch and increment and save. And next we'll look at the lighting.